Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Masechtas Nedarim, Daf Ayin Tes. We are going to begin on Ayin Ches Amud Beis, second line from the bottom. Mesev Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda asked the following question: Chaymer b'hakim mibahafer, ubahafer mibahakim. With regard to certain aspects, establishing or verifying a neder were more strict than being mefer, annulling it, and yet sometimes the other way around. Chaymer b'hakim. As we continue to Ayin Testament Aleph, why do we find, or how do we find, the hakama is more strict? Shashtika mikayemes. It says that once you are quiet, that itself also is a form of verification. As the Ran says, Kol shashasa kol yom shmiya. As long as you're quiet the entire day that you heard about it and you didn't do anything, you just were shasik, you're silent, then itself is a form of hakama. Then shtika mevateles. However, shtika will not be mevatelet. And namely, on that day, if you didn't say anything, that's not a hafara. We'll have to understand what that means. Kiyim belibo kayim. Let's say a person does hakama in their heart, so that's enough. As the Ran says, you don't actually have to make a declaration. Even if it's just believe, it's enough. Hey for believe in a mufer. However, to annul a neder, you actually have to say something. Kiyim enu yochel hafer. When it comes to be mekayim something, you can't be mefer. Hey for in yochel kayim. In other words, once you did one, you can't do the next. Once you did a hafara, that's it. You can't change your mind. Once you did a kama, that's it. You can't change your mind. Katani, nonetheless, we still learn shashtika mekayemes. That when it comes to the din of hakama, by you just being quiet, that verifies it. So ma'ila b'shaisik almanas lamekat. L'chayra, it's talking about even if you were shaisik almanas lamekat, which a person wished to really annoy his wife, but his intention was not really to verify it, but he was planning on in the future doing a hafara. So on this, Rabbi Chanina said on the previous daf, Tashayisik amanas lamekat, mayfair fil mikan viad yud yamim. It says you could still do a hafara. But over here, it says shtika mekayemes. So l'chayra, it's not true that a person who is shasik, then itself is considered hakam, and you can't be mayfair afterwards. Where it says low. When we said that the shtika is enough for hakama, that's when you did it with intention for the neder to stay, but not lameka. So hainu kiyim belibo kayim. Isn't that the same thing as having it in your heart? That we said that having this in your heart in itself is a hakama. El v'shaisik stam. Rather, we're talking about that you didn't have any of these intentions, not to verify it, and you didn't have any intention to eventually remove it. You just were silent. Can you imagine? You're just not thinking. So, l'chayra, stam is also a hakama. So this is what it's coming to tell us, that when a person is shasak, that is a hakama. However, lamekan, it's not. Okay. So right now we're saying that if it was almanas lakayim or shaisik stam, so then the din is that it is a hakama. However, it's not a hakama if it was almanas lamekat. So ashchan chaymer b'hakim mibahafer. We find this notion that hakama is more strict than hafara. So b'hafer mibahakim inolan amr. Rabbi Yehuda, Nishalon al hakim v'nishalom al hafer. So he says that when it comes to a person who verified a neder, and it's a strong neder, so you could go to a chacham and have it removed. However, you cannot do this when it comes to hafara. That once you already were made for a neder and it doesn't exist, you can't undo it because it's gone. Let's look at the Ran. Nishalon al hakim she'im hakim Yochel Shayla, but Oisa Yom on that day, Yochel Hafer Bo Yom. Because remember, the Chacham, he removes it like it never happened. The Ein Shalom El Hafer, She Hefer, once you did Hafara, Shivini Yochel Hishol Vato Oisa Hafara, because it doesn't exist anymore. Question 5. Ma'u Chomer B'Hafer M'B'Hakim. How is Hafara more strict than Hakim? So he said Nishon al Hakim and Nishon al Hafer. Okay, that was question 5. Weiter. Meisiv Rav Kahana. The pasuk says in B'Midbar, V'im hacharish yacharish lo isha v'gomer. If the husband was silent, which means he was shosik, he didn't say anything. So b'shaisek amanasal meikat hakas medaber. Apparently, we were going to establish that this pasuk is talking about a situation where he was shosik, and he did it even though his intention was lamekat. And on this, the Ran says, "Uksiv b'hahukra behekim es kol nidareha deshuv ein yochel hafer." So this is going to be another question. This pasuk is coming to tell you that even in the case of shaisek amanas lamekat, it is a hakama, and therefore you can't be made for after 10 days. So Gemara says, 1 second. Maybe the only time it's a hakam is because your shtika was for that purpose, to verify it. Now, because the pasuk says ki hacharish law, so the pasuk already says elsewhere ki hacharish law, you were silent. So harim b'shaisek amanas l'kayim hakas medaber hamanim and im hacharish yacharish law yisha. So why do we have this extra pasuk? It can't be coming to tell you shaisek amanas l'kayim because you already have a pasuk for that. It must be b'shaisek amanas l'mekad hakas medaber. So this is clearly a hakama, which is not like Rabbi Chanina, who says that it's not. So where it says 1 second, stam. Why don't you just say, like we said, there's 3 categories. Why is it a tiyufta? Why don't you just answer, oh no, the second pasuk is shaisek stam, as we said before. Where it says because there's a problem. Kroi serik sivi. It's an extra pasuk. So the Ran says, plus a kroik sivi. There's 3 psukim. So because there's 3 psukim, so that means that when it comes to all 3, the din is, it is a hakam. And therefore, once, even if it was done with the wrong intentions, according to this, we're saying a maskana, it doesn't make any difference. Once you're shaisik, that's it. And therefore, the din is that it's a hakama, and then that is chal. Question 6. Why need 3 psukim? So now we know. One is shaisek amnas l'kayim, one is shaisek stam, and one is shaisek amnas l'meikat. Then all of these 3 situations, the din is the same, and that is, namely, that it is a hakama, and therefore he cannot retract later on. Which is a tiyuf don Rav Chanina. Fine. Weiter. So Meisiv Rava, so he asked the question, Nadra im chashecha. So he said that if he made a neder, let's say right before sunset, meifrula ad shulachashcha. So you can be made for it only up until sunset, which is the Mishnah. The Mishnah did not hold me'es l'eis. She'im lo hefer, let's say he didn't do hafar, b'chashcha, and then it becomes dark, in yachol hafer, it's too late. Amai l'havik kamas l'meikat. Why don't we say that it's common case shaisek hamanas l'meikat, and you could do it afterwards? So again, this is another tiyufta. Why do we have to ask another tiyufta? It's another question. Okay. Meisiv Rav Ashi. So in other words, the point is that our Mishnah doesn't make that distinction, which must mean that it doesn't matter. That no matter how you're shaisek, the din is the same. That you can't undo it anymore. Meisiv Rav Ashi. Yodeani sheish nedarim. I know they're in nedarim. Aval eni yodeh sheish mafirin. I didn't know that there was this concept of annulling these nedarim. Yafer. We say that it works. That a person could be made for this. Says the Ran, eni yodeh sheish mafirin. B'yoyim sheshamaiti, the day I heard it, lo hisi yodeh shehabal yochel hafer. I'm just not an expert in all these things. I didn't know that I had the right to do it on that day. I wish I did. I would have annulled it. So Yafer b'tach oisa yoyim shalamad shahabal yochel hafer. It's a great chiddush. The day that you learned about it, then you're allowed to remove it. Even if, let's say, it's many days later, So, B'yom Shemo doesn't mean the day that you heard it. It's the day that you know that you heard it, that you could have done something about it. But knowing something and not being able to do anything is pretty much pointless. So that's the tremendous chiddush, which is also a tremendous life lesson as well. So, again, Yofer. Yodiani sheish mafir, and I knew it could be made for her. Any yodia zen neder. I didn't even realize what she said was a valid neder. Or was a neder rameir oimel yofer chacham omrim yofer tzamachos v'mayil havikasher segan masalekat tiyofta. Again, you could ask the same question. That why is it a whole debate over here? Well, we can just say he was shoysek om nasal. He obviously didn't want to be mekayim it. Doesn't make any difference. The fact that a person would be shoysek in itself, no matter what the reasoning, the din would still be the same. Okay. Hanulach nar hamarasa, hanulach nar hamarasa, hanulach nar hamarasa. We continue with the 11th parak. Ve'elu nedarim shehu mefer. So these are the nedarim that a husband can be mefer. Devarim sheish bahen inoi nefesh, which the Mishnah is going to explain. Something which causes pain to the soul. Why inoi nefesh? So Rashi says it's based on the pasuk lanos nefesh ishay kimen aviyasheferenu. It says it explicitly when it comes to the husband being able to mimikayim or annul, it's totally on anos nefesh. So inui nefesh, which again we're going to define, is what it's referring to. So the Ran says shahabal mefer v'cheina av mefer labitai. This is not only referring to the din by inui nefesh for the husband to the wife, but also the father to the daughter. Sheish v'hem inui nefesh, says the Ran mefarish b'gemara dehu adin the mefer nami devarim sheben l'beina. We're going to see also matters that are pertaining to the relationship between a man and a woman, which we'll discuss what that is as well. And why does the Mishnah not mention that? Is there a distinction between these dinim? That's what we're going to see in today's daf. So, im erchatz, im lo erchatz, whether I'm going to bathe or not bathe. So that's something which will cause inoi nefesh in the home if a woman doesn't bathe. Im iskashet, im lo niskashet, whether she's going to adorn herself. Says the Ran, kishot aponim, kigoin koil upikus, putting on makeup on the face. The sfilu rabbanan the mefer mishum nidri inui nefesh. This is considered inui nefesh. Although kishut shel mata, when it comes to adorning from below, if rabbanan moedel Rabbi Yosef the ein el nidri inui nefesh l'vrim shebenu ve'no. When it comes to matters of adornment below, or cleaning one's areas which are below one's face, those are not considered to be inui nefesh, but rather matters which are levein between matters between a husband and a wife. As we continue to ayin test Amid Beis, Amar Rav Yossi. So in this, Rav Yossi says, Ein elu nidre inui nefesh. These are not matters which are inui nefesh. So on this, the Ran says, "Mafarsh v'gemara Rabbi Yosi nidri inui nefeshu tol habyan aval nedarim shebin l'beina habyan." He's of the opinion that those are actually cases of matters vein l'beina. Again, if you can make a neder anyway, well, it's not real much of an afkamina, at least up until this point. Ve'elohein nidri inui nefesh. So Rabbi Yosi instead gives other examples of what is inui nefesh. Amra, if she says, "Kainim peres oilam olai." I'm not going to eat any fruits. Harizeh yochel hafer. So you're allowed to be made for that neder. So according to him, that's considered to be inui nefesh. Paris, medina zu olai. I'm not going to eat fruits from this country, but other countries, yes. So yabel medina cheres. So apparently that would not be a val. You wouldn't be able to be made for that because it's not such a big deal. It's not real inui nefesh because you can just simply get fruits from another country. Paris. Chenvanizeh olai. I'm not going to eat from this store. So any yochel hafer, again, you're not allowed to mefer. So fine. However, imu haisa parnasai el mimenu. Let's say the parnas is only from him. Harizeh yafer divrei Rav Yosi. What does that mean? So the Ran says shechenvini ze makivoi v'yimatzi ach shehi makivoi. So this store actually is beneficial because they give them credit. So they can get food and then pay back later. So that is something which is an inui nefesh, in the event that they don't have monies available at this moment. So therefore, because of that, a person is allowed to be made for that neder. Okay, obviously a lot of this is going to be discussed in the subsequent dafim in this parak. So let's see the Gemara. Nidre inui nefesh, who de mefer, shein lehem inui nefesh, eino mefer. Now, based on our Mishnah, it's pretty clear that the only things that a husband, or for that matter, a father, are allowed to remove are matters which are called inui nefesh. Whatever inui nefesh is, again, this is machlokas, but the Mishnah only brings down inui nefesh. I'm hatanya bein ish ishno bein avlavitoi. Melamed shabal mefer nedarim shebein levina. We learn out from here that even if it isn't inui nefesh, the husband can still be mefer, matters which are between him and her. So Amri, so he said, you're right. A husband is allowed to be mefer also, not just inui nefesh, but also devarim shebein levina. So what's the difference? Halein v'halein mefer. You're right. These and these, the husband are allowed to be mefer. Miu, but there is a difference. Inui nefesh, when it comes to inui nefesh, let's call it rechitza in kishut, mefer l'oilum. He can be mefer always. Aval ein behen inui nefesh, if it's not inui nefesh, but rather it's matters between him and her, k'de'isa techutei, while they are together, habi hafara. Because when it comes to matters which are relevant to the intimacy of a man and a woman, it would obviously make sense that's only when they're still married. When the neder will come back, says the when it comes to the Devarim Shabin Leveina, Shein Behen Inui Nefesh. Obviously, if it could be Devarim Bein Leveina, which has Inui Nefesh, but we're talking about there's no Inui Nefesh at all, it's only Bein Leveina. So once they get divorced, so it makes sense that the din should be that they are that neder will be chal, because it doesn't apply. So it's inui nefesh, so maybe that applies forever. However, when it comes to bein u'beina, that's only while they're married. If there is inui nefesh, then it doesn't come back. Because even though it's true, it really looks like bein u'beina, but it also is inui nefesh. So therefore, when it comes to inui nefesh, it applies forever. So if it's only devarim shebein leveina, so then it only applies while they're still married, but not afterwards. So that's the distinction. So the Gemara says, 1 second. Devarim shein behen inui nefesh. So if you're talking about devarim shebein leveina, which has no inui nefesh, kimi garish l'chayil, is it true you're going to tell me that once they're divorced, the neder is chal? Says the Ranu, mistaber bahu alpha pisha chazer v'nasa. Even though he technically can remarry her, so then the neder still is on. Ba'atanan, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer Yafer, he says that we'll see in the Ran what this is talking about, that he could make a hafara, he could annul it. Shemi Gershena, because maybe he'll divorce her. Ute asurala, and then otherwise he'll be usher to remarry her. Alma kimi garishla, once you divorce her, umeferla, mi'ikara havi hafara. L'chayra, the hafara is completely removed. It's not that it gets reinstated. So how can you tell me that it's once they're divorced, it's chal? So look in the Ran. What is this case? Kainim shani oisal picha. So a person makes a neder, basically that I'm not going to derive any hana from you. Inasarchel hafer daha mishabdole. So you don't need to make any hafara, because there is an obligation of both parties to be able to provide for one another. So therefore, it doesn't mean anything. Rabbi Yochanan Omer Yafer Sheim Lu Yafer. If you don't make a hafara, Yochel Haneder Kishigar Shena. So once you're divorced, you don't have any financial obligations to each other. Therefore, maybe the neder will be chal. Uti asura lachsulo, and then you won't be able to get remarried to her. Shemi yehanim imena, because you're going to get hana from her. You get remarried. Therefore, you have to do hafara now. Alma ki mefer law. Now that you do hafara mikara filu basa gershin l'chayil nidra. Obviously, it's not chal. The whole point is, what happens if you get divorced? You won't be able to get remarried because there's a neder against her. So then that you can't get hana from her. So the question is, what does that show? It clearly shows that when you make a neder while you're married, after you get divorced, the neder doesn't come back. So again, Masi Odeha is considered to be Devarim Shevein Levinah, which apparently is not Inui Nefesh. So therefore the question is, how could you tell me that that's the distinction? That once they get divorced, when it comes to matters which is Vein Levinah, that the din is that the neder is chal. It's not true. So Amri Halina B'Halin Habi Hafar. So again, you're right. When it comes to Inui Nefesh and Devarim Shevein Levinah, it doesn't make any difference. The distinction, there is none. When it comes to Hafara, the husband has the full rights to be able to make for both of them. Ella Nidri Inui Nefesh Mefer Bein La'atzma Bein La'acher. And there's a machlukas the Ran and the Ritva how to read this. We're just going to do the Ran. So the Ran is going to explain in a second. Let's just read these words. When it comes to Nidri Inui Nefesh, you can be made for yourself or with others. In Behen Inui Nefesh, which is Bein La'atzma Mefer La'acher Bein Mefer. Okay. Ve'hachi katani el devarim. This is what the Mishnah means. Shehu mefer bein la'atzma bein la'cherim. Whether it's you or the next husband, nedarim sheish b'heninu nefesh. Okay, let's look on the Rashi, on the Ran. Kivan sheni says la'acher, that once she gets remarried to someone else, a second husband, batla hafara delay, then the hafara is removed. V'chayil nidra. And the neder is now chal. So because the whole point is you can't get we want you to be able to maybe remarry her. But if there's a neder that's chal upon her, you won't be able to get remarried. But the whole din of Machzor Shaso is you're only allowed to remarry her as long as she hasn't married anyone else in the meantime. But if she's already married someone else, so then it's no longer shaykh for you to ever remarry her. And therefore, because of that, the din is that the hafara will come, even if you're a mefer, which you could do, but the neder comes back once she gets remarried. These are matters that can be mefer, bein la'atzma bein la'cherim, even her second husband. Givan detani mefer stama hafar oyulamas mashma. So when you say hafara, it means forever. So let's read this one more time. Nidri inui nefesh mefer bein la'atzma bein la'cherim. In other words, the hafara is gone, and that causes the neder to be gone. However, if it's not inui nefesh, wherever it's devarim bein levinah, so the issue is obviously you could be made for while you're married, and while you get divorced, still it's not going to be chal because you may want to remarry her. But once she gets remarried, then we say mefer ein beheninu nefesh la'atzma mefer la'cherem einu mefer. In other words, that it does go back with her second husband, and therefore because of that, that neder does work. The Rashi says similarly, la'atzma mefer kishigershena v'yachsurena, that when la'atzmo means if you remarry her, right? You remarry her, so then the neder doesn't work yet. The hafar is still good. However, but once she's already married to someone else, that it is chal. Okay, we're going to stop here. Let's see question TB25. Ma nafkamina ben hafara nidre inoi nefesh or hafara nedarim shebein levinah. Let's see what I wrote. L'maskana. Nidre inoi nefesh ben hu, and I wrote bal, or fil acherim. Nedarim shebein levinah hu v'lo acherim. Okay, that's correct. Hopefully I understood what I wrote when I wrote that. Let's see how they write it over here. Nidre inoi nefesh mefer la'atzmo la'acherim. Nedarim shebein levinah in a mefer la'acherim. Dehainu nisei l'achar shuv neseres. Adkan.